Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. In a world where innovation and change is the new norm, it is very important then to actually understand that how has this in turn actually impacted Pakistan's education system. And this is something upon which we'll be shedding light during the course of today's conversation. Overall, we'll be talking about not only, of course, the fast changing education system as it does stand today. In this regard, we'll also be talking about the various curriculum developments as they have so happened, be it in terms of course, modifications which have, of course, included animal welfare in the curriculum now, or for that matter, with regards to greater emphasis being placed on teacher training per se. We'll also be talking about the increasing need for there to be greater parental engagement and how that in turn is so important today so as to have a more well-rounded education system. We'll also be talking in this regard, of course, with regards to not only improving our educational policies, but also, strengthening the institutions per se so that everybody can work together not only to improve both the quality but also the provision of education as it does stand in the Pakistani society. All of this today, that too with a very eminent panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Ms. Rana Irfan, who's an educationist. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show. Alongside her, I have Ms. Saima Abbas, who's an admissions manager. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. And via telephone line, we'll be joined by Madam Bela Raza Jamil, who's a public policy activist and she's also a senior educationist. Assalamu alaikum, madam, and welcome to the show. Madam, now to get the conversation started with you, when we do talk about education, we understand overall we have seen Pakistan's education system evolving, be it in terms of the modifications that we see in the curriculum, be it in terms of the focus that we now have, even in terms of the relationship of the student-teacher relationship as it has been typically. So what reasons do you feel are responsible for the same? Is it because, we as a society have now perhaps evolved more, and by that what you also mean there's a greater tilt towards social media, internet, because of which of course we now see digital education being the new thing too? Or do you feel this was something which had to inevitably happen?
I believe that there is not one reason, but there are many reasons for that there are multiple reasons. You see, their education is evolving, it's developing, it's improving. Children are being more empowered, I believe. We talk a lot about student-centered education, and that gives them a kind of empowerment. Another reason for that, I believe, is the digitalization, these social media platforms. Even, the children of 3+ know a lot about handling the mobiles of their mothers or mobiles of their parents. So I think that it had to happen.
And also, madam, you see, it's also generally the way we've seen the society evolve too, because typically if you were to then construe, education is just not something which is then basically limited to the four corners of a classroom. It is something which of course transcends beyond. And you would have something to add on this, Ms. Saima, because when we do talk about education, we also understand the fact now typically the student-teacher relationship perhaps isn't something what it used to be quite some time back. When we were growing up, teaching used to be considered such a noble profession, not that it is any less now. But the way students, they tackle teachers, that I feel has really changed. Do you not feel now that generally, at least in some stratas, we see now students being more disruptive or perhaps more disrespectful towards their teachers than perhaps was the case maybe a decade ago?
Yes, I totally agree with you. This point is very, very important because with the passage of time, and as Ms. Rana put it this way, that with the social media awareness and access to the children, I think social media, with its positive effects, it also has its downsides as well. And it is also implementing in children the self-awareness and entitlement actually. The entitlement that they have, that empowers them to be less respectful. And in the previous era when the teachers were there, that absolutely was a very noble profession. But right now they do not think that way. They think that they're entitled for everything, and
it's basically a lack of respect somewhere. So here the parents, they need to show greater engagement as well, because that element of respect is something that comes from the house. Yes, madam.
Can I add on to it? Actually the society is deteriorating. We have ethical and moral value deficit already. So it's not only in the schools, it's everywhere. Children are learning what they're living actually. They will not learn the values, or you cannot teach them that you have to be kind, you have to be good, you have to be happy, you have to be tolerant. You have to live with it. When you are going on a road and you see the road rage, even the parent of that child is doing and involving him or herself in the road rage. What will child learn? You know, teachers are not that tolerant, they are not that loving, they are not that kind, and this is something that we need to inculcate in the teachers as well. You know, that's two-way, it's not one way.
It's a two-way string, basically. At the end, when we talk about this, necessitates then better teacher training to address your concern, and at the same time greater parent engagement too, because if you want to have a well-rounded education, then we need to have the right balance of both. On which, Madam Bela, I'll come to you, and here we must take your perspective into account as well. So what do you feel are the most pressing challenges that Pakistan's education system is currently faced with? Is it, you know, a lack of inclusion, especially with regards to when we talk about the curriculum per se? Is it, for that matter, a lack of access to the education system itself, or do you feel that our education policies are such that they in themselves need to be revamped?
I would like to respond to your question in the following manner, but it is important now not to split a divide between access and quality issue. What is important is that the education system in our country must take a lifelong perspective. So from the time that the child is born, we start planning for that child. And the moment the child, even in preschool, and the government, thank God, has recognizes the right to education for preschool also, even though our Article 25A says 5 to 16. And so whilst it recognizes it, we need to be able to see that access and quality go hand in hand. If you provide just mere access, so you may have for 6 grades only one teacher, which is, by the way, a big reality for a place like Sindh or other parts of the country, where you may have for an entire primary school only one teacher. Their access is very problematic. And so you need to have access with quality. And now more we are looking at quality, not just for literacy, numeracy, but also for life skills, or what are called social emotional learning skills, be redesigned with this in the beginning. Then only we can take aspects of equity also with us successfully and sustainably. No child deserves in Pakistan, no child, no matter where they are, to just have access without quality. And when there is no discrimination for every child, girl, boy, transgender, anyone with any religion or any economic status, once they get access with quality, then you're addressing the issue of any kinds of discrimination and equity challenges. That is a solid education system. Sadly, in Pakistan, if you look at every policy that we have, it always speaks of access and quality separately. Now we have, the two have to go together, and not just for preschool or primary. It has to be all the way through till 16 years of age, or what we should say.
Right, madam, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, madam, and I would want you to add to this further as well. So when we do talk about the most glaring problems in Pakistan's current education system, what in your opinion are the most glaring ones? Because if you were to look at it at least from a bystander viewpoint, we understand the fact that one of the most glaring issues is perhaps the fact that it lacks that element of inclusivity. And by inclusivity, I mean inclusivity not only in terms of having a curriculum which better suits, you know, all the stratas of the Pakistani society, but inclusivity also in terms of the provision of facilities, because we have seen concerns coming from people who are differently abled. Even if they do want to go to school, they perhaps might not have that right access.
You are absolutely right in saying that, Fatima, and I 100% agree with you there. But it's not, again, as I, my opinion is it's not one problem. There are multiple issues again. If you talk about curriculum, the curriculum implementation is the problem. If you talk about curriculum implementation, hiring of effective teachers is a problem. If you talk about teacher training, implementation of the training and follow up of the training is a problem. So it's not only one thing that we should talk about. It's not something that should be dealt in isolation.
Right.
We have to deal it in totality.
Of course.
So if you ask me, I am dealing with the children who are small children. So I believe that value education is
very
the
important.
core of education.
That's very right.
If you are holding or if you are carrying a lot of degrees and you don't carry the manners, you are not polite, you don't have empathy for the rest of the world, if you are not kind, if you are not respectful to your teachers, to your society, to your
then
elders,
education is of no value.
Yeah.
Madam, I think you've raised a very valid point on which I would want you to build further. When we talk about adding value to the education, here again the focus then shifts back to the teachers like yourself or any other teacher, because it is of course the paramount responsibility of any teacher so as to ensure passes on those ethical values to her students. But in this regard, do you not feel then that we need to make due modifications to the curriculum as well, because we have seen some positives emerging. For example, we did see a few years ago a chapter on domestic violence be added. Then we also saw at times of the SNC life skill based education was something that was prioritized. And then recently, 2 months ago, we also saw that a chapter on animal welfare was also added. So why not give due consideration to ethics, to having ethical considerations in mind when tackling with life?
It has been actually done. The school where I work, it's about like more than 20 years. 2 decades ago, we started thinking about the core values, about the value education, and now it's part of the curriculum. 20 years back, we made it part of the curriculum. But I always believe, Fatima, that you don't teach values. You have to live values. You have to be there for your students to, receive and greet them. They will learn greeting. You have to be kind when you are talking to them. If you are yelling at them and telling them not to yell, what message you are communicating? When we say that children are very good learners, if they are not very good learners, they are very good imitators. So first of all, as teachers, as school leaders or other stakeholders, even if it is a support staff member or if it is a security guard or if it is a support help that you have in schools, every individual, everybody has to be nice and carrying some values that children will imitate and finally they will learn.
And this is something which would then equally transcend to the homes as well, on which I'll come to you. Admissions process. Now we understand that admissions process is something which is of course one's first step of delving into the education system. If you don't get admitted into any school or college, you can't possibly seek an education to start out with. How inclusive do you find the admission process to be? And by inclusivity here, I'm saying how accessible, how affordable is it for people who belong to the marginalized sectors?
For this matter, it's very important that you've raised, because access to good education or anywhere around, it's very important, and there are barriers. The barriers can be family conditions, the barriers can be fee, the barriers can be location. So there are various barriers that parents come across, and that can be a hindrance in the admission process. So what we could do, we could as an institution, as a collectively, we could we can give different incentives to the parents and the parent body.
That's very rightly put by yourself, Ms. Saima, because we have seen cases where scholarships have been given to people who perhaps might not belong to that affluent families, or even people who might belong to other marginalized sectors, like persons with different abilities in this regard too. So in this regard, what are the latest trends that you do see in schools and Pakistani colleges or even universities?
Yes, we are in this regard, we are offering scholarships and on different levels, and that can also let aside the academics, we are also offering different kinds of for holistic abilities as well, because there are like so many children, they might be good in sports, they might be good in creative writing, they might be good in literature, they might be good in music. So these areas should be definitely covered, and we are doing that.
Right. But here when we do talk about ensuring that the admission process itself is holistic. We also need to ensure that we of course take all segments of the society together. And you must be remembering this very famous case of a university where there were some girls who actually complained that the admission process in itself was very blatantly discriminatory because it only used the word he. It didn't use the word she, which automatically assumed that only males could apply so as to seek admission. So how are concerns like these, how are language affirmations taken into account when we talk about making the admission process more inclusive?
Yes, the language is very important because, you know, he and she, both of them for the society is equally important. That's what I feel. Because parents coming in for the admission, mostly that I feel they are putting emphasis on the future goals for their sons. But I would like to emphasize, because the girls also coming, we have an example that we have a child who is a girl and she's a basketball champion, like at the national level, and she was given admission instantly, and we gave her the platform to, you know, prove herself. So I think that these children, he or she, they are smart enough.
Of course.
Like they are active, they're smart, and they can manage academics alongside their sports. So these girls are also an asset to the institutions and for the society.
And this is of course the perspective that admission process should take into account as well. I think something which also earlier mentioned, madam, that when we talk about ensuring that the education system is revamped, it should be revamped in a very holistic manner, so as to give due consideration not only to the academic record of any student, but also to ensure you take into account that child's perhaps interest, their passion, their personal statements, on which I'll come to you, Ms. Bela, and I would want you to comment on this as well. So when we do talk about the various issues that of course young children face with regards to accessing the education system in the country, in this regard we must not forget the fact a girl child definitely in this regard is discriminated more, either because of poverty, either because of being married at an early age, or for that matter because of our typical socio-cultural norms. So as a seasoned educationist in your right, how do you propose can we overcome these socio-cultural barriers so as to ensure a girl child's access to the education system in the country?
So that's so important, Fatma. As you see that in Pakistan, if you look at data, when there's pre-primary schooling, it's very good to see that girls and boys almost come in equal quantity. Parents make almost no discrimination between the girl child and the boy child entering preschool. But when a girl child does not get the kind of attention she deserves and keeps getting older without making any progress, parents tend to withdraw girl child mostly because they are reaching puberty. Our girls are reaching puberty even as low as 8 to 9 years of age. And then girl child have bigger problems because they do not have post-primary opportunities. So we have very few schools in Pakistan which are at middle levels and secondary levels. Just as you saw that the case of the Alai Buttergram tragedy of the chairlift, the tragedy which ended up in, thank God, all 6 boys and the 2 teachers being saved. There, 150 boys from that village were going from that village to another village across the river to get education. But you know, no girl from their village was able to get any education because there's only one primary school, and parents would not allow girls to go to a school which is a boys' school and endangering their lives of going 2 hours by foot. Now, that is a biggest challenge that we have in Pakistan, because you know and I know that when girls can get to grade 8, there is no stopping them. Every data that is coming of the board examination results, girls do so much better than boys, but only when they're given an opportunity. And we cannot afford in Pakistan to deprive 50% of our population of quality education and enabling opportunities.
Of course, madam, and this is definitely something which needs to be then considered in the larger social perspective, because inevitably then we also see that younger girls, they are one way or the other forced to marry at an early age too. So if we want to then ensure that we actually give them that right access and of course provide them with a quality education, then we need to tackle that social evil of child marriage too. But another thing that I would want you to then further comment upon is the need to have not only transparent but also the right accountability accountability measures so as to, overall improve both the service quality of education provision in the country? So in this regard, madam, considering the fact that you have been, a very seasoned public policy activist, what do you feel needs to be done when it comes to changing, rather updating our policies?
So, and I think that's a very intelligent question that you are asking. Issues of accountability are always evidence driven. When we have data, and by the way, Pakistan government is getting better and better data, but what are we doing with the data? That's the question. Are the policymakers looking at the data and seeing how we are either improving things or still discriminating against some groups, the poorest, because we've got data which is there by income levels. We've got data which is there by gender. We've got data which is there by religion, etc., etc. But we need to have data-driven regimes to find out if, in fact, we are fulfilling the constitutional right of Article 25, which means every citizen of Pakistan without discrimination, and 25A, which is, you self said, the right to free and compulsory education of 5 to 16-year-olds. The government needs to look at data and then to be bold enough and innovative enough to come up with solutions so that we can come up with reforms and solutions to overcome the challenge of discrimination and to make sure that we are not driving away very significant portions of a population, such as girls or such as other groups, such as the poorest people, because we know that in Pakistan today, we have 50% of our population who are the poorest or in churning poverty. Gets better, but the decisions are not getting better or that responsive. That is our solution. I mean, we do the Asar survey, as you know. The Asar survey is a public good.
Right.
It goes in front of everyone. It is launched by the parliamentarians, launched by the bureaucrats. Now they need to look at that data and the data that they are collecting almost on a monthly basis. We are in an education emergency, which is getting deeper because of the challenges of poverty, the crazy inflation, and the population bomb. We have 2.5%, according to the latest data. We have population growth of 2.5% annually. And in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, that's almost 3%.
That's very rightly put by yourself, madam. But in addition to what you said, then we also need to see this issue with regards to economy as well, because a lot of times we do see that parents, they perhaps might do want to send their children to school, but because of the economics, might be forced not to. On which I'll come to you, madam. And here I understand that you've also worked in this area. So when we talk about looking at this from an economic viewpoint, what do you feel are the changes that need to be made so as to address this issue?
Actually, Fatima, I think we should train the parents. We have to talk to them. We have to, seep into community, and then we have to create that kind of conviction in them. We have to talk to the parents, we have to train them, we have to tell them that obviously food is important, but future of your child is more important.
Of course.
And that will only come when we educate the parents also. Most of the parents are not even educated. So they don't know the importance of education. They will say, what will happen, if we don't have the food, if we don't have anything on our plate.
Right.
So we have to train the parents, and the entire community has to work on that together.
Right. Basically, there needs to be community engagement in this regard.
Yes.
On which I'll come to you, Ms. Saima. When we talk about the fast changing, ever evolving admissions process, how do you see it changing for the better or for the worse over a period of time? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities that, digital education, or for that matter, the influx of social media or internet has brought with it?
With the changing era and with the changing times, the challenges, what I feel, not much actually, because with everything being digital and online, it has, where I am working, the digital processes are so seamless that the challenges become a little bit lesser. So the challenges I face sometimes is like sometimes, because it's a digital world and we are so dependent on the infrastructure. So sometimes, when the systems are down, then at that time we give some human touch to it. For example, we give some guidance, whatever is needed at that time. But that is very seldom because, everything is so seamless nowadays because of the digital era. Everything is online. We are looking for all the information online.
One thing which has definitely changed for the better in this regard is the fact that we have seen, of course, with the influx of internet and of things being digitized now, it's easier to check things, because there was this fallacy where we used to see that a lot of people used to actually get admissions on the basis of fraudulent documents. So that is something that can possibly be checked now. But when we talk about the cons, because it's, I think, only fair that we talk about both the angles, both the pros as well as the cons. My question is that what about those people who don't have that access to digital education? Because we are just not considering education as it exists in urban cities like Lahore, we are talking about the entire country. What about the rural areas? So would they not be in that way disadvantaged?
That point we have to come in. We have to jump in to give them guidance, proper guidance wherever it is needed, because you know they also have the full right to have the access to the the best education. So wherever the rural areas, if you're talking about rural areas, so wherever they in the digital world, obviously they are not equipped to access to that. But there I see that the management and the administrators, they are there to guide them, because we have to make sure that whatever it is, they have to go through the admission process. It can be any way that we can give them guidance accordingly. It could be paper, it could be, because that is what that is the needed at that time.
That's right.
Yes.
Because I think a responsibility rests on people like yourself as well, because I feel at least the admission process itself is also very daunting at times. People don't know what to do, where to apply, how to put their documents together. So I think there needs to be proper guidance throughout the process as well, on which I'll come to you, madam. When we do talk about accountability, when we do talk about ensuring that there should be greater transparency, do you not feel then for this to happen, there needs to be a more open and a more transparent line of communication between the teachers, between the parents and the students too?
Yes, Fatima, this is very important actually. You know, if you are dealing with, small, innocent, eager, inquisitive little lives, obviously it has to be transparent. We have to be accountable for so many things. But let me tell you one thing. It's not only the school accountable.
Right.
It's there are certain things where parents are accountable. There are certain things where students are accountable. So it's like a teamwork. As I said earlier also, that we are not working on something in isolation. Each and everything is connected, because it's connected with the human life.
That's very rightly put by yourself, that when we do talk about accountability, a great responsibility also lies on the parents and their necessary engagement too. But when we talk about ensuring that the parents, they are also at par with the education system, at par with the teachers, here it's equally important then the parents themselves, they need to be literate enough, because of course you can't expect people who are uneducated, who are illiterate, so as to be able to give their due contribution to a child's education. So in this regard, when it comes to sensitizing or perhaps making parents aware, is any responsibility then vested on the schools?
Yes, a lot of responsibility. Actually, you need to give orientation and training to the parents also. When we start our academic sessions, we give proper orientation sessions to the parents with systems, procedures, requirements, our wishes. We are working towards a common dream. And the dream is the child,
Right.
the education of the child.
Course.
So when you are working towards the common goal, towards the common achievement of towards common dream, then it's not matter of power. We have to, think equally, that we are equally responsible. And you have to inculcate that sense of responsibility in the parents also. When we started as private sector, the pressure was all upon the private schools. Yeah, this is the school's responsibility, or we are giving you this, this responsibility, this task. So you have to do it. But now they realize, because of the training that we give them, because of the orientation that we give them, because of the time to time communication that we do with them. Now they understand that they are equally responsible. And even we talk to the students.
Right.
They are like 3, 4, 5 grade students I talk to. them about the responsibilities that they have.
Right.
You have to, you know, teach children how to manage their lives. I would just like to share with you, Fatima, you will be really happy to know that we have the same system. You know, we are actually trying to keep us updated, you know, with the current situations and with the current trends also. We have parent councils, we have policies regarding safety and well-being of children, mental well-being of children. We do understand that this is an age where children do get stressed out.
That's very rightly put by yourself, madam, because then again this is something which we just shouldn't aspire to have in our own country. We also see this happening in other parts of the world. For example, in Canada, we see that parents are very actively involved in the decision making process, and there are parental committees and councils actually formed to that effect. And in Finland as well, we also understand that there's a lot of focus being placed on having collaborative nurturing environments, to which I'll come to you, Ms. Saima, and here we must take your perspective too. So when we talk about overall revamping, overall changing, we also understand the fact that the change must also come from the teachers too. And teacher training, as we all understand, is something which has developed a lot of popularity, or for that matter gained momentum over a period of time. So when it comes to investing in teacher training, more particularly in the public schools, how do you feel can that be done? Should there be a focus on their skill development? Should there be a focus on having the right qualifications? Or should there be an equal focus on them also ensuring professional development is something which is a continuous process?
I think it's an overall package that a teacher should have, because dealing with the children, it requires everything. It requires your qualification to some extent. But I think after the qualification, there are a lot of other factors that are very, very important in the teacher training.
Right.
Because they should be knowing how to deal with the children in all manners. That could be emotional, that could be connecting to them, that could be implementing the academics as well. But mostly, the most important I think is that in the rural areas, those children need to build up a lot of confidence, because
That's
they
very
lack
right.
confidence. They need to be a part of this world, and they have the whole right to be. So
Right.
teachers are there because parents are not that educated. So teachers have a very important role to put in.
But another question that I would want to put to you is the fact that we have seen, as you very rightly so mentioned earlier on during the conversation, that the admission process in Pakistan, the admission criteria itself, that has also evolved. But when we make a comparison of the same with other countries, and Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, I understand that you've been working there as well as an educationist. How do you make that comparison? How flexible, how adaptive is Pakistan's admission process compared to that in other countries?
Well, we have adapted very well, and it's still going on. And I would like to say that the entire dynamics of education and especially the admission process has evolved. I'm just going to give you an example. For example, the online admission process has become so efficient that in some institutions the entry tests have, they've been eliminated, because first we used to, now we have some other areas like, SATs, GREs. So we are really coping up with the international standards, because
Very well.
Yes. So we, it's taking us on international level as well, because that really helps us to evaluate the child on a very efficient basis.
Time, I'm very glad that you've pointed that out, and this is definitely something which needs to be highlighted. On which, madam, I'll come to you, and moving towards the end of the show. Here it's equally important then to also talk about this work of storytelling that you have been very successfully doing. And in this regard, we also understand the fact art can be that one medium which can be a very effective mechanism so as to teach students, be it theatre, be it poetry, or any other form of art, so to speak. So how do you feel as an educationist, can we actually integrate art into the curriculum so as to not only improve its overall quality but also perhaps enhance the learning process too?
Actually, Fatima, we can do wonders by integrating storytelling and other mediums of performing arts into the curriculum. And let me tell you that now this is an international practice also, but in our country we are doing that. Storytelling and arts and music is part of the curriculum, and it's cross curricular,
Right.
It's not only embedded in one subject. Let's say it's in English or it's in languages. It covers maths, it covers general knowledge, it covers science also. You to make these your lessons interesting and innovative, you need to have these kind of mild and soft and interesting tools where
it
you can
enhances
teach.
the learning experience of the child as well, and I feel that when you teach the child things other than what they're supposed to know, I think it makes it more impactful for them to remember.
It becomes a story for them.
It becomes a story. It's easier for them to remember
How
it,
the
and it
earth
leaves a
was
lasting
created.
impression.
Yes,
exactly.
it becomes they can do a role role play on that.
Right.
So it's not only storytelling, but it's theater. It's about acting. It's about arts. They are drawing things. They are creating things. Through their projects. They are writing poems about that. They are making tunes for those poems. It's a beautiful combination.
It's a series of different things, and I think this goes back to what you were earlier saying, that when we talk about improving the education system, the curriculum, it also helps us make the curriculum more holistic that way. On which, madam, I'll come to you, and moving towards the end of the show, we see that in Pakistan, unfortunately, career counseling is something which isn't given due importance. If you were to compare it with other Western jurisdictions, we have seen networking events, we have seen career counselors actually guide people through, telling them that how is it that they can actually apply for a job, what would be a right choice of career for them. But in Pakistan, unfortunately, we see that although over a period of time the trends have changed, we are still just not there. How do you, as an admissions manager and of course an educationist, propose that we get over this issue? Because it is very important. Until unless people know this perhaps might be the right choice for their career, they might end up being in the wrong career for the rest of their lives.
Yes, it is very, very important, Fatma, because parents walking in with their children on a senior level, career counseling is very important, and it's really, really needed at that time actually, when they're stepping into the institution and they're keeping their I would like to say we have professional career counselors, we have coaches to guide them through, keeping the subjects in mind, keeping the future goals in mind and their future aspirations, because that is so important. Their milestone for the future has to be stepped, has to be covered at that point of time. So we provide them with career counselors so that they can just take out all the information from the child, whatever she or he wants to do in future, or what are the interests are. So because most of them have the question that if I do this, if I do that, what job will I get?
And then we also see, Ms. Saima, that sometime down people's respective careers, they make a switch. Like doctors, they perhaps might want to go into a different field. Lawyers, they might want to go into another field. So if they do want to make that switch, then perhaps make it in a more informed manner.
Exactly, that's what we do. At the time of subject selection, we provide different kinds of opportunities, different kind of combinations, that if you take the combination of these subjects, you will be able to pursue these lines in the future. So all these are available and guided, the children are guided through, so that makes them clear for the future goals. And what I think that career counseling should be a vital part of the admission process and the institute.
Absolutely. On which I'll come to you, madam. We also understand the fact that you've been the founder of both Children and Teachers Literature Festival, the purpose of which is to not only foster greater creative thinking, but also to actually revive that culture of book reading in children. How do you feel will this overall impact the quality of education in the country?
Thank you for asking me that question. The question is absolutely brilliant. As you know, since 2011 November, we began the festival. The festival has grown by leaps and bounds. Today, we have many school systems. We have the science festivals that have come up as a derivative of that. Many people have adapted it and taken it from good to great. We are going to be having our 3 festivals this year in Lahore, Islamabad, and in Karachi, because last year we had it in smaller cities and places. We want to have as much support as possible for the festival. We would request anyone who wants to come and support the festival to please reach out to us, because we are in need for support and sponsorships from the government, from the industry, from philanthropists and private sector, so that at least millions of children can attend these festivals, not only just attend the festivals, but we also find young authors through the festivals. We are so happy that Pakistan is perhaps the only country which does these festivals in this way, and reaches out to children, not just in elite forums, but this is a great equalizer for children to learn through the performing arts, through STEAM and STEM, which is science and technology and engineering and mathematics, but also learn through critical thinking, read aloud, and critical and creative writing. We feel very honored that we are being able to address this, as well as address the issue of climate change and environmental awareness, which is so desperately needed in Pakistan. We are honored that PTV has brings every time the Children's and the Teachers Learning Festival always gives it space and time. And I hope that we will continue to make Pakistan an amazing country through the way children learn from these festivals. They become happy, and that makes us all very happy that learning is a happy business.
At the end of the day, like you very rightly so said, it is a community engagement, and this also adds to then the quality of the education which is being provided to the children per se, because this in itself also inculcates that basic sense of civic responsibility into them, so as to be better able to fight various societal challenges. Right, madam, your
And they
point
do.
is noted. Thank you. On which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much, Ms.
Thank
Saima.
you.
And thank you so much,
Fatima.
Madam Bela, for your precious time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about the changing trends of education as they do stand in the Pakistani society. The positives which have definitely emerged is the fact that we do see that a greater focus now is being placed not only on teacher training, but also on greater parental involvement, which is definitely something which should be welcomed. But if we as a society overall aim to improve both the quality as well as the provision of education, that this is something that we need to work upon collectively. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.